Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm going to kick it off with a piece of audio here, proving yet again that the Civil War is very real. And it's kicked up to such a step here, of course, that more Democrats and endless other individuals have no problem even speaking about it on the record in front of a microphone with a camera on them. Again, they're not even hiding it. This particular piece of audio is Representative Laura Friedman, every single time, Democrat from California, and it says here on C-SPAN, speaks to voters on President Trump's agenda. This was from this past Monday. Again, nice summary and culmination here. It's only 30 seconds long, but you'll get the picture. In 3, 2, 1.
Every single week, we have a litigation working group where a large group of us, and I'm talking there's maybe 75 members of the House, sit down every single week with the AGs to talk about legal strategy. This is all going on every single week behind the scenes. It is nonstop talk, nonstop introduction of bills and legislation, nonstop being on social media as much as we can without being throttled and without the, crazy analytics and doing all these things.
Now, of course, she admits it. She admits, again, that they're going to whatever lengths they have to subvert the president's agenda and this, that, and the other. 2 more observations in that video. Number 1, of course, I don't have the larger clip, and I kind of wish that I did. But on the other hand, you can hear a guy in the back of the room, and the camera is on her, but you can hear a guy in the back of the room start yelling. And he just starts saying something to her and interrupting her. And the room sounds like it's practically empty. And this is a big, big deal because this is something that is happening in California among California representatives with regularity. They are speaking to empty rooms or next to empty rooms where like one person will be applauding and yet no one else shows up within their district to hear anything that they have to say because no one's interested. It's not that they didn't know that the meeting wasn't taking place. That's what, again, a complete fool would think. Well, they just weren't told in advance. That's not it. They're not interested. They're trying to sell an agenda to people that is, again, attempting to subvert freedom with their so-called democracy. Again, if I hear that term one more time, I'm going to kill someone. We live in a constitutional republic. Do people not know this? Clearly they don't. Democracy is mob rule. And they don't even have a mob anymore. They don't even have the majority. They don't have anything. They don't have an agenda. They don't have anything. In fact, their only play right now is the weakest play of all, which is not just, of course, engaging in these interagency civil wars and legal battles and whatever else, and, judge battles and you name it. But they have Corinne Jean-Pierre out there writing a book titled Independent or something along those lines, an inside look at the Biden White House and the turmoil and blah, blah, blah. No one cares. So she actually believes that rebranding herself as an independent as opposed to a Democrat matters to anybody. It doesn't. A communist is a communist any way you slice it. They can change their colors all they want because they do. They're shapeshifters in that regard. But we know she's a communist. And they'll throw certain people under the bus because that's what communists do. They'll kill their own. They do it constantly. Hell, look what's happening in Ukraine. Again, I know I'm bouncing around here, but can you see all of these connections? I just saw a video of Ukrainian soldiers killing other Ukrainian soldiers because they attempted to run away from getting slaughtered by Russians because they don't want to fight. They want to be free. But as I've always said, the end of communism, of course, is your head up against a gun and your face down in the dirt or up against a brick wall. And that's how it always ends. That's how it ended for these 3 Ukrainian soldiers who got shot in the back of the head by these other 3 Ukrainian soldiers. Not to mention the Ukrainian soldiers kidnapping people, kidnapping their own citizens, throwing them in automobiles, driving away, throwing them into the front lines, and then, of course, them getting killed. Communism doesn't work. Never has. It's violent. It's stupid. It's not civil. It's not just. Never has been. Never will be. It is a system that has to be destroyed, and the people who support it have to be destroyed. It's that simple. You can't make peace with these people. Listen to the way they talk. I mean, Jocelyn Benson, here's another example. Jocelyn Benson this year, the Secretary of State in Michigan, is now being impeached because she's openly admitted, yep, I'll break the law. I'll break any law that I don't like, in particular when it comes to voting and the elections and so on and so on and so on. Lock her up. Kick her out of office. Look at her face. I know it's terrible, but I'm looking at a picture of this woman. She looks like a flippin' psycho. It's all in the eyes. It's always in the eyes. These huge eyes, this demonic smile. These people are flat out crazy. But one of the cool parts about an impeachment process here, certainly again if it ends up going to trial, which it should, certainly again within the House, and then I believe it operates the exact same way at the state level as it does the federal, then of course the Senate gets it, and then what have you. But either way, whatever evidence comes out in that particular trial is going to be astounding. You know that in order to bring articles of impeachment, you have to have something. Unless, of course, you're completely fabricating it. But what's funny, of course, is that you don't have to fabricate it with the Jocelyn Benson. You don't have to fabricate anything with these kinds of people. They do this out in the open. They openly break the law. Again, audio clips from interviews, paperwork to back it up, emails, open records requests, the whole thing. They've got her dead to rights. Again, I hope they air that particular impeachment trial. That would be rather interesting, I think. Let me move on to this one now. This is the Triple B bill. The big, beautiful bill, that is, and everything that is entailed in that, which I have not read the bill, but again, there's plenty of debate going on about it right now. This was another post again from Ariel on X. Again, don't know the veracity of any of this, but again, it's food for thought. Just putting it out there, just relaying a message here. And here's what they said more specifically about Elon Musk, Thomas Massie, and Rand Paul not liking this. It says, again, 3 reasons why these figures are against the bill. You will not find this anywhere else. Why? He said, cowards on this platform do not want to get deboosted. Elon Musk, Thomas Massie, Rand Paul. Number 1. Musk isn't fighting the big, beautiful bill because of some noble stand against government overreach that's a smokescreen. The bill signed into law in March of 2025 as part of Trump's Genius Act framework integrates blockchain technology into financial systems to enhance transparency and security, as reported by the White House. Now, of course, as we know, there's a Palantir connection there, relationships, money exchanges, a number of other things that lots of people have questions about, myself included. But moving on, it says for Tesla, this transparency is a death knell. The company has long relied on regulatory credits to inflate its profits, raking in $1.8 billion in 2024 alone from selling EV credits to other automakers, according to Tesla's 2024 annual report. Number 2. Do you remember when Thomas Massie voted against the anti-organ trafficking bill? It says Massie's vote against the anti-organ trafficking bill isn't about his oft-cited libertarian principles. It's about protecting a multi-billion-dollar organ trafficking empire that he's entangled with through his Kentucky connections. The cabal, a shadowy network of elites spanning government, tech, and organized crime, relies on figures like Massie to shield their operations, which include harvesting organs from trafficked children and adults. He goes on and says, often sourced from vulnerable populations in Eastern Europe, Central America, and even the United States foster care system. In Kentucky, Massie's home state, a trafficking ring uncovered in 2024 in The Intercept linked his campaign donors to a syndicate that moved children across state lines using Bitcoin payments, with some victims ending up in organ harvesting operations run by a CCP-backed group in Louisville. He said, number 3. Now let's make our way around to Rand Paul for a bit. Rand Paul's public persona as a libertarian champion masks a far darker reality. He's a key facilitator in the cabal's trafficking operations, leveraging his Senate influence to shield their activities. A classified FBI memo leaked in April of 2025 via WikiLeaks revealed that Paul funneled $10 million in cryptocurrency through a Swiss account tied to Zurich Ventures, a shell company that he used to launder money for the cabal between 2022 and 2023. He wrapped up and said this money funded black sites in Ukraine where trafficked children and adults were held for organ harvesting, a joint operation with rogue elements of the Chinese Communist Party. The memo details, of course, probably Israel as well, the memo details how Paul used his position on the Senate Homeland Security Committee to delay investigations into these sites, ensuring the cabal's operations continued unchecked while victims, some as young as 8, were subjected to unspeakable horrors, their organs sold to elite clients for millions, unquote. Now, let me mention this. Again, I'm just going to give my 2 cents on this, and I could be completely off base. But again, time will tell potentially, depending on what we see and what we come across here. In the past, of course, Donald Trump has criticized Rand Paul, and he's criticized Thomas Massie. He has not really publicly criticized Elon Musk very much. Certainly, I believe the only time he's really criticized him happens to do with his so-called lack of support for this bill, which again people say will cost Americans $2.4 trillion or raise the debt by $2.4 trillion. But then again, it certainly begs the question, I think, as to whether or not, again, that money is immediately absorbed by the money that we have received back from other nations, the gold that we've taken back from the Vatican and other places as well, and again, whether or not the entire debt clock is just a giant lie, which means $2.4 trillion really, again, it just gets absorbed another way and basically immediately disappears. So I don't know one way or another, but I tend to believe that the outside government influence, specifically Elon Musk, might not be a real bad thing. It might, in fact, just kind of be a part of the show that we're watching. It's sort of the faux division. Make your enemies believe that you're divided when, in fact, you're not. That kind of thing. But we know, again, the more that you extend out to elected officials like Rand Paul, Thomas Massie, or anybody else, that's where it gets even dirtier because those individuals, again, can be bought and sold. And we've seen it time and time again. Yes, we've seen them take a stand against certain individuals like Kevin McCarthy when he was, again, trying to run for the House. Thomas Massie was having none of it. Neither was, Matt Gaetz and a number of other people. And then one at a time, people started to buckle. And they either voted for him or against him or however they ended up voting. But either way, there's a lot of that constant back and forth that, again, could be their own misdirection, or it could be the individuals who handle them to some extent saying what they're saying. Again, I'm glad that Massie in the past has brought up things like the Israeli lobby and how unfortunate their influence is with just about everybody in Congress. But that's not to say, again, that Massie isn't controlled by other individuals. He doesn't have to be controlled by Israel or AIPAC. But he could have, again, gotten the position that he received as a result of other business ventures or turning a blind eye to this, that, or the other. And really, that's all a person has to do in order to gain influence in any position is you just turn a blind eye. Because everybody can see who is turning a blind eye. Again, we'll have to see how it all shakes out. But I think, again, that in the long term, it's not going to be a bad thing. Again, I just heard Trump with the German chancellor there in the White House, and they were talking about it, and they were basically saying the tariff revenue is going to offset any spending, along with, again, the profits that are going to be made from actually passing the bill, certainly over the course of 10 years. So it's actually a surplus, which is a good thing, clearly. That seems to be the case anyway, but who knows? Again, it's one of those things where time will tell, but usually if Chuck Schumer is saying don't pass the bill, then, well, that's usually a good thing. And again, if Elon Musk is only interested in money, and he thinks, again, that the cuts that were made with Doge are all of a sudden going to disappear again, I don't think that's the case. USAID is pretty much defunct at this point. Again, the money that was being laundered is no longer being laundered, hopefully. So that's basically a constant profit, if you think about it, or certainly a permanent savings of some kind. But anyway, again, we will have to see what happens. There was also this, again, sliding into education here. Earlier this week, Linda McMahon was testifying. Again, she's just getting hammered by these left-wing lunatics who are, again, openly advocating for tranny parades in school and African American history classes, and you can't cancel those, and blah, blah, blah. And then again is teaching the Holocaust, a DEI program, and all these other questions that she received. They have absolutely nothing. And they, again, also don't consistently hear their own contradictions. They're blaming her for not knowing that states are ultimately responsible for funding of schools, which of course they are. And that's exactly what the Department of Education is seeking to do, is to basically be eliminated. The reason that these politicians in Washington, and certainly even at the state level, don't want the Department of Education at the federal level to be eliminated is not because of its elimination of civil rights protections. That's not it. Again, it's not, and it's also, of course, not because of any loss of money. The fact is that moves over to the Treasury, and the Office of Civil Rights, of course, continues to exist, along with, of course, Department of Homeland Security and the Attorney General's office, and you name it. I mean, all of those particular branches of government simply just absorb any of the other cases that the Federal Department of Education was receiving. The real reason that they don't want the Federal Department of Education to disappear is that was one of the major funnels of all of the NGOs and all of the gay agendas and the social engineering and the lying and everything that was coming from foreign countries into our country. Not to mention, again, the Americans that were working with the Federal Department of Education to, again, further brainwash not just students, but administrators, teachers, and the entire apparatus. That's why they don't want it gone. They're also going to, of course, lose some kickbacks as a result of the Department of Education, hopefully in the future, being completely eliminated. That'll take an act of Congress, but even so, that's why these individuals are flipping out. And the only card, of course, they have now is racism. So you're taking money away again from blacks, and you're taking it away from minorities and poor people and this, that, and the other, which they openly admit are minority blacks. So again, I don't know why they consistently say, well, it's only black poor people that are losing money or don't have access to education, so they say. Again, it's completely ridiculous. Everybody has access to education. The question is how much truth does a person really want to know? Because you're not going to get it in a public school. Hell, you're not going to get it in a private school or a chartered school either. But you can get it on your own if you let your own intuition take over and your own ability to click and search and dig and read and make connections and comprehend and watch and listen and all of that stuff. But again, they just don't want it to disappear because they're going to lose negative influence. They're going to lose the ability to continue to manipulate the minds of people. That hurts their feelings, of course, because that's how they operate, on a basis of feelings, not facts. And then, of course, they're going to lose a kickback, and they're going to lose money. Take, for example, Westerville City Schools in central Ohio. I've brought them up numerous times before. You're well aware. Their treasurer and their board president and their superintendent, all females, went to the Ohio House this past week and spoke with their budget committee, I believe it was, or some other committee. But either way, this is one of the committees having to do with, again, the finances of how the money gets spread around in the state of Ohio, certainly for public schools. And their treasurer, again, is essentially embarrassing themselves. They're just going up there and they're whining about how they're losing money and our levy didn't pass and we've had to do this and we've had to do that and we had to build new schools, but now, we have more diverse students and yet we have a lower student population. And it was just one whine session after another for about 5 minutes straight. And I thought, again, you don't know how to manage your business. And now you're looking to government to save you. So you make fun of government all the time. You say you don't like the moves that they make and the financial responsibility that they engage in. But when you're up there talking about how you're not financially responsible, it's somehow government's fault, not your fault. Again, these people don't listen to themselves. I mean, they really don't hear themselves either. And the problem is, too, is that they decided, again, Westerville's, whatever it is, YouTube channel, they openly decided again to play the entire 6 hours of these hearings where people from the public, again, come up to the microphone and basically beg for stuff from government. And the Westerville clip, again, of the treasurer, basically only got 6 views. That was it. At the time that I watched it, I think I was the 6th or 7th viewer of the video, and it had been up there for hours. Which means I watched it, they went back and watched themselves watch it, and one other person watched it, or 2 other people, and that's it. See, nobody cares. Public schools, again, are a bad business model. I'm going to keep saying it. I know I wring this cloth dry and beat this dead horse on a constant basis, but they don't know what they're doing. They spend money as soon as they get it. They rarely to ever sit on it. They lie to people saying they have no money. Their first move is a levy. When the levy fails, all of a sudden they find tens of millions of dollars, which again they've always had. They just gaslight the public into believing that they don't have anything. And then again, when Linda McMahon testifies, or someone who is, again, fiscally responsible and has actually run a business, certainly a multi-million-dollar, multi-billion-dollar business like the WWE, you had better bet that they know exactly what they're doing. They don't expand their business unless they know that they have a surplus and they know they have lots of money already in the bank, so that if it goes defunct, they're really not losing anything. But that's not the case with schools. They receive money and then they overspend. And then they blame everybody but themselves. They build, again, new buildings. They do 1,000 different things. You don't need any of that to quote-unquote educate somebody. You need a competent human being, a competent student, limited materials, and the truth, with no restriction. But you don't get any of that in a public school setting, private school setting, charter school setting. It doesn't work that way. It's always government control. It's always government control over who's doing the instructing, how long the instruction lasts, what subject is being instructed on, where the instruction is taking place. Anytime something is over-controlled like that and micromanaged like that from entities for which instructors, parents, students, you name it, will never even see, there's no way it'll be successful. Now, of course, one of the other ways that these larger institutions, certainly colleges and universities, are losing money on a constant basis has to do with their levels of illegality that take place, again, within these institutions. And yes, it happens at the K-12 levels of schooling all of the time, too. The flavor of the year, as we know, and it's been the flavor over the last number of years, has to do with boys playing in girls' sports, and that being a direct Title IX violation. Of course, Joe Biden and his fake administration tried to basically rub that out of Title IX as if to say, I don't know, it's an open civil right, and they have the right to play in those sports. Well, if that's true, then why not just make all sports co-ed? But of course, they didn't do that. They're interested in normalizing perversion. That's the real purpose. That's the real point of all of it. It's about normalizing insanity, blurring the lines between the sane and the insane, to where you can't tell the difference between them. Same thing again with violence on school campuses. It's about blurring the lines to get it to where you don't know who's really being violent, who's planning the violence, and what's really happening. Again, I've been over the Jewish lobby's influence on college campuses dating back to well over, again, 120 plus years ago. We're well aware that this is the case. But one of the things that's happening here now, of course, is a particular executive order, or certainly it's referred to here on their website as the fact sheet, from President Donald Trump, restricting foreign student visas specifically at Harvard University. This is a good thing. Again, you may recall that during his first term, all of the Confucius centers that were on college and university campuses were found, of course, to be Chinese spy operations. Shouldn't surprise anybody. Everybody was going, geez, what's with all the Asians around? Certainly in the town where I live, Southwest Ohio. Oxford, Ohio, Miami University, packed to the gills with sushi, ladies and gentlemen. The town looked as American as chopsticks. They were everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Supercars. They were driving supercars. They were coming over here with copious amounts of money. The university loved it because they're getting, again, foreign money, which is more so than, say, an out-of-state tuition. You're talking out-of-country tuition. I'll get to that later because Texas is, Texas is in the business of cheating when it comes to higher ed too, and they're still doing it now because, again, they want bodies and seats. They want enrollment. But regarding Harvard University, again, I'm all for it. Take every single foreigner out. Do it. Revoke all their visas, but make sure you do it from numerous countries, not just one Middle Eastern country or two. Take it away from all of them. Again, if anybody over here on a student visa breaks the law, kick them out. I'm all for it. But you have to kick out the people, again, who set up the violence. The people who scheme and meddle about it behind the scenes. Let me read this particular fact sheet here. It says the following, quote, restricting foreign student visas at Harvard. This was on June 4th. Today, President Donald J. Trump signed a proclamation to safeguard national security by suspending the entry of foreign nationals seeking to study or participate in exchange programs at Harvard University. It says the proclamation suspends the entry into the United States of any new Harvard student as a non-immigrant under F, M, or J visas. It directs the Secretary of State to consider revoking existing F, M, or J visas for current Harvard students who meet the proclamation's criteria. The proclamation does not apply to aliens attending other U.S. universities through the Student Exchange Visa Program and exempts aliens whose entry is deemed in the national interest. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting wording. So does that mean that if they come from Israel, then by default, they are a part of our national interest? That seems hard to believe, but then again, I've been surprised before. It says Harvard has demonstrated history of concerning foreign ties and radicalism. Again, from a historic perspective, who's behind that? I'm not saying the Chinese Communist Party isn't. They certainly are, but we know again that Israel is behind a great deal of this too, along with Middle Eastern countries. It says the Federal Bureau of Investigation has long warned, that foreign adversaries take advantage to easy access to American higher education to steal information, exploit research and development, and spread false information. Yep. It says the university has seen a drastic rise in crime in recent years while failing to discipline at least some categories of conduct violations on campus. Harvard has failed to provide sufficient evidence to the Department of Homeland Security about foreign students' known illegal or dangerous activities, reporting deficient data on only 3 students. It says Harvard is either not fully reporting its disciplinary records for foreign students or is not seriously policing its foreign students. And that line right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the dead giveaway. That's the dead giveaway that Donald Trump and the White House lawyers know for a fact that Jewish students are being protected on campus. That even though they are the agitators also, that they're the ones that are scheming and meddling behind the scenes along with the help of the Jewish lobby and the financiers and everybody else to put these rallies together that again are even pro-Palestinian, designed to confuse individuals because again they see all of the flags and they think, well, it must be funded by pro-Palestinian individuals when in fact it's the Jewish lobby and Mossad, and Israel, and your tax dollars, and everything else that are funding both sides of it. Again, for the purpose of creating more division. That line right there in this fact sheet is basically an open admission that they know that more Jewish students should be deported because they also are the ones who should be disciplined, and yet they're the ones not being disciplined also. And they're openly saying, we know that Harvard isn't disciplining them. Now, they're not going to say that specifically, but that's basically what that line means. It goes on, it says, Harvard has also developed extensive entanglements with foreign adversaries, receiving more than $150 million from China alone. In exchange, Harvard has, among other things, hosted Chinese Communist Party paramilitary members and partnered with China-based individuals on research that could advance China's military modernization. The Chinese Communist Party has sent thousands of mid-career and senior bureaucrats to study at U.S. institutions, with Harvard University considered the top party school, quote-unquote, outside of the country. Xi Jinping's own daughter attended Harvard as an undergraduate in the early 2010s. Harvard has failed to adequately address violent anti-Semitic incidents on campus, so they say, with many of these agitators found to be foreign students. Yep. Who's funding it? It says Harvard has persisted in prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion in its admissions, denying hardworking Americans equal opportunities by favoring certain groups, despite the U.S. Supreme Court's 2023 ruling against its race-based practices. It says these concerns have compelled the federal government to conclude that Harvard University is no longer a trustworthy steward of international student and exchange visitor program. Good. It says holding Harvard accountable. President Trump wants our institutions to have foreign students, but believes that the foreign students should be people that can love our country. It wraps up here. It says President Trump, quote, the students, well, we want to have great students here. We just don't want students that are causing trouble. We want to have students. I want to have foreign students. He went on and said, we have people who want to go to Harvard and other schools. They can't get in because we have foreign students there, but I want to make sure that the foreign students are people that can love our country. He wrapped up with another quote and said, we are still waiting, for the foreign student lists from Harvard so that we can determine, after a ridiculous expenditure of billions of dollars, how many radicalized lunatics, troublemakers all, should be let back, should not be let back into our country. Harvard is very slow in the presentation of these documents, and probably for good reason, unquote. He knows. He completely knows. He knows that there's no way that you toss out just pro-Palestinian students like they're the only problem. That's completely ridiculous. And it's not just Chinese students either. These are individuals, again, who are in Israel and from Israel, and they come over here to Harvard for that same communistic instruction. Again, whether they're members of Assad, funded by the Jewish lobby, or other reasons, but again, it's a spy operation. Harvard University always has been. Their president's Jewish. And they're being called an anti-Semitic campus. Again, make it make sense. It's laughable. The corruption's everywhere, and they're not the only one. Now, here's what Texas was doing. Texas is actually so desperate for students and bodies to actually be attending their colleges and universities that they were attempting to give foreign students in-state tuition. Because again, it's typically this way across the nation, if you attend a college or a university in the state where you are a resident, a legal resident, then you don't have to pay nearly as much tuition as if you were coming from out of state. Which, if you think about it, is also kind of discriminatory because, of course, these in-state colleges will turn down an application from a very well-qualified individual who happens to be living in that state. But if they're up against somebody else who is from out of state, the university or college knows they'll get more money if they accept the out-of-state individual as opposed to, of course, the in-state individual. So again, it says DOJ sues Texas for offering in-state college tuition to illegal immigrants, emphasis on the word illegal, in alleged violation of federal law. Hours later, state officials agreed to comply with federal law. That was quick. Quick little turnaround there. Little lawsuit from the DOJ, and they went, we'll do whatever you want, no problem. Now, of course, the DOJ is just going to have to make sure and follow up to, again, ensure that the law is actually being followed. that they're not sneaking in a few illegal aliens. Again, this is why they're so desperate to have an actual human being attend their universities and colleges, specifically on campus in brick and mortar buildings, because they're losing enrollment. It's dropping. It's been plummeting since 2020. It's been dropping since before that. But the COVID lie wiped it out. And of course, all of the constant bad press. And it's not fabricated bad press, it's just that their insanity is on display for everybody to see. We can all see it. Everybody's having a nice laugh except for the people working within. And they're being exposed. And high school students are figuring this out, and their families are figuring this out, and they're saying, you know what? Maybe online is the better avenue, or maybe just joining the workforce or starting your own business right out of the gate is really the best thing to do. Why don't we just do that instead? Yeah. Who wants mounds of student debt? I don't know anybody who does, but I do know, again, if you want to defund a university or a college, or certainly collapse it in a short amount of time, same thing is true, of course, with American K-12 schools, get rid of the anchor babies. This again was from the Federalist. Get a load of this one. Nearly 1/4 of U.S. public school enrollment could be anchor babies. If you pull 1/4 of the students out, and because 1/4 of the student population are illegal aliens, which that's what an anchor baby is, the institutions or institution will completely collapse. If they lose 25% of their enrollment, it's over. It says the following here again: returning non-citizen children and non-citizen parents to their countries could save taxpayers hundreds of billions, especially in state budgets. Yep, no doubt about it. It says huge implications. It says now for some more math related to the taxpayer costs just for educating these 9 million kids who would not be in the United States without law breaking. Federal statistics estimate that U.S. taxpayers spend an average of $16,280 per student in school year 2020 through 2021, the latest data available. It says 9 million anchor babies times $16,280 each in $145.6 billion is $145.6 billion per year. It says again, this is probably a lowball figure for several reasons. First, taxpayer spending per pupil is higher today than in 2020, given the vast COVID quote-unquote money shoveled out and the resulting inflation pressuring legislators to raise education spending for teachers' salaries since then. It says second, the illegal immigrant population disproportionately hides in higher spending blue states such as California, Illinois, and New York. New York taxpayers will shell out approximately $35,012 per student in the coming school year. In 2023, California public schools spent nearly $19,000 per student per year. And in 2024, Illinois schools spent nearly $24,000 per student. This is another reason U.S. taxpayer spending on students who shouldn't be in the United States is likely far higher than our $145.6 billion per year estimate. What a nightmare. It says some might dismiss this astronomical feature as a rounding error in at least the federal budget. But every dollar spent on a child who is rightly another country's responsibility is a dollar not available for an American citizen. Further, this figure extended just 7 years. About half of a child's K-12 experience totals $1 trillion. That's half the current federal deficit. And then it goes into state budgets and what states would end up saving. Again, would they have to close schools? Yeah, but so what? Again, online is the way to go, and it's cheaper. And students aren't leaving with copious amounts of debt, not to mention it's available then for more Americans. That's the point. Actual American citizens. There's also a shift here, too, which is a bit interesting, certainly from an administrative standpoint, is A.J. Gochik sent me this particular article, and again, it's also from the Federalist here. This specifically has to do with one of their candidates to be the president of the University of Florida, a guy by the name of Santa Ono. And he was basically rejected. They were going to hire this guy. Again, he's the former president of Michigan, University of Michigan. And then they dug in, of course, into everything that he was doing up there and his connections to diversity, equity, and inclusion and all of that, apparently. And let's see here, the Board of Regents, if I'm not mistaken. Here we go. Sorry, the Florida Board of Governors overrode that recommendation for the first time in the 17-member board's history with a 10-6 vote. So again, the university and their Board of Trustees was like, yep, we want this guy. And then the Board of Governors was like, sorry, that's not going to happen. So this is interesting. Moves like this are interesting. Get the leftists out. Get rid of them. In fact, if you really wanted a revolution in American K-12 and even higher education, you would look at all of the administrators and what they went along with during the COVID lie, and you'd cut them all loose right out of the gate. You would present them with the same document across the board for all of them and say, you went along with this. You personally engaged in copious amounts of civil rights violations for every single human being that was basically under your administrative care. You broke numerous laws, you believed complete strangers on TV about everything, and you just fell for it. So we're firing you, and now you're gone. And we're going to start over. And during the interview process, we're going to see how close you were to diversity, equity, and inclusion, quote unquote, in that entire grift and social engineering project. Because again, it was all about money laundering. It was about subverting an entire nation, beating everybody down with fear and retardation, and getting them to, again, unlearn what they actually know to be true and morally sound. While, of course, normalizing the hating of whites, which we know most of these colleges and universities were doing, and then, of course, accepting other individuals who had no business even getting into a college or university setting. So again, that was a constant also. But going back in time, again, just to see how these people went along with the entire social engineering program would be a real revealing aspect of any of these interviews. Seems like Florida certainly paved the way for that to be the case. Again, if an entire board of trustees, which you can assume is hard left-wing, if not full-blown communists, wanted this individual to be in there, well, they didn't get their way. Just proving again that everybody has oversight and everybody's got a boss. And finally, I would say there's also this aspect. There's always this competition on the left to see who is more left, which I find remarkably funny. Which individual can be more communist than the other? I'm a communist. No, I'm a communist. I'm more of a communist than you are. Well, I'm not that much of a communist, but I'm willing to be. And then they just go back and forth like it's some stupid competition. We get it. You're all communists. You're incapable of an individualized thought. You blindly follow orders no matter what, no matter the situation, and you lick as many boots as you have to get wherever that you think you want to go. I think it's pathetic, but, that's my take. Either way, it's just one college, it's one university. Time will tell in the future, but who knows? Again, I'll always advocate for online learning. If a person wants to go to a college or university, that's probably the best way to do it, because you can always turn it off. Again, you don't have to waste your time going to and from a particular place. You, of course, can always turn it off, and you can take breaks, and you can turn it on when you want, and you can, again, think about it and reflect on it and read as much as you need and research as much as you need, and then apply yourself as much as humanly possible without any distractions. That's always far more conducive for an effective learning environment than, again, sitting in some room with somebody drone on about something they know nothing about. So, yeah, I'll always advocate for that because that's been around for quite some time and it's highly successful. Okay, one last jab-related thing here before I wrap up. William Mackis has himself a position he'd like to share with individuals apparently regarding the Maha movement and some of the individuals, again, who have been hired as a result of all of this. And there are people who disagree with him. And there are some people who agree with him and a lot of people who have questions. And me personally, I have my own take, which is a little separate from some of the others. But let me read his post here, and then I'll give you my 2 cents on it. He said the following. He said here on X, Maha is now the mRNA technology savior, ? Says, one of my personal flaws is that I give everyone the benefit of the doubt for far too long. He said, and I gave the entire Maha movement the benefit of the doubt despite some highly, highly questionable moves. Appointment of Marty McCary as head of FDA, appointment of Vinya Prasad as head of FDA's CBER, and then it says Vinya is one of the biggest attackers of ivermectin. He goes on and says nomination of Casey Means as Surgeon General. I still can't believe this one, how embarrassing of a choice. And then went on and said appointment of Callie Means as White House advisor working on Maha issues. I, of course, have played her audio, I believe, on the show here before in the past. And again, had an open question about some of her connections to the past, although they said some pretty good things at the time, but either way. And then it says December 7th, 2024, FDA granting fast track designation to Sanofi for 2 combination influenza and COVID-19 vaccine candidates with Novavax. He went on and said March 26th, 2025, FDA granting fast track designation to Sanofi for chlamydia mRNA vaccine. It goes on and says April 10th of 2025, FDA granting fast-track designation to Arcturus, if I'm saying that right, for the self-amplifying mRNA influenza H5N1 vaccine candidate ARCT2304. May 20th of this year, 2025, FDA granting Novavax COVID-19 vaccine full approval. It says, but the May 31st, 2025, FDA approval of Moderna's Next Spike mRNA vaccine is the last straw for me. I no longer support Maha and the direction Maha is going in. Everything they've done and everyone they've appointed has been for the purpose of rehabilitating the mRNA vaccine technology so they can keep it going. I don't believe this is some 5D chess. The entire Maha movement is now built around keeping mRNA technology going in some form until the public is once again ready to accept mass mRNA vaccination. This is where we are going, he says, and the above appointments and fast-track designations make that crystal clear. And if I'm wrong, why did Maha greenlight 3 new mRNA vaccines? We've been had, unquote. Here is where I disagree and agree. I agree that moving the mRNA technology forward is a horrible idea. It's a biological weapon. It's part of the wireless body area network, and it's designed to kill people. Period. All mRNA technologies should be halted instantly, regardless of what Robert Malone says or anybody else. All these so-called individuals who helped create it and whatever. It's metal in your bloodstream that does nothing but hurt and kill you. Period. With that said, I don't need to listen to anybody who is a part of the so-called Maha movement or works within the FDA, CDC, HHS, what have you, in order to make decisions for me. The ultimate lesson here, and should have been the ultimate lesson for everybody, is that we should never trust government. Not ever. For the rest of our lives. But then, of course, that we have a responsibility to teach that lack of trust, and that trusting government is a huge mistake, and that has to be taught to younger generations. Again, this is part of the problem with the schooling system, as we know. It's a trust government, we are government, trust us system, which is exactly why they want to maintain the schooling system. The issue here, however, just like the schooling system with the medical system, is you can vote with your feet and just say no. You can say, I'm not going to participate in that, not now, not ever. And then you just don't. If they want to waste hundreds of millions of dollars creating and manufacturing while skimming off of the top themselves and, of course, pulling their own contracts and their own salaries, giving themselves bonuses, while they create more and more poisons that people will be dumb enough to take because, again, why not? They're already out there. They're still taking injections thinking it's helping their health, and yet they just keep getting sick. And they aren't making even that most basic connection. If people are dumb enough to still put needles in their arms that has mRNA metal in it, well, that's their problem. And they're going to end up sick and they're going to end up dead. No skin off my back. I don't care. That's their mistake. But we get to vote with our feet. We get to use our brains. We've already proven that we are smarter than medical doctors. We've proven we're smarter than lawyers. We've proven that we have an ability to learn because we know that we know nothing. And we consistently learn copious amounts of information while not engaging in sophomoric or sophistry arguments with anybody. Well, what do you mean you're not, you know about that? You're not a doctor. We don't do that because we don't have to. We just read and we ask questions and we listen and we observe and we connect dots. And then we arrive at a conclusion. You know, the whole scientific method thing. That's what they don't do. But it, of course, is a massive lobby. Donald Trump's even said it. It's the biggest lobby that exists. What if the destruction of the I'll take it to this angle. What if the destruction of the mRNA technology hinges on the failure of these specific mRNA vaccine advancements that I just referenced here, that Macus just referenced? What if people don't use them? Then what? Again, products go out of favor because people don't buy them. Businesses crumble because people don't use the product. If they're advancing a deadly product and the vast majority of Americans now know that it kills people upon contact, why would they ever pay for it, let alone take it, let alone suggest it to anybody? Certainly American citizens wouldn't if they had a brain and they knew what was actually going on. And fortunately, a great deal of us now know. So again, I think that this will crumble under its own weight. It's not necessarily an anti-Maha stance. It's more of a exposure stance. Yeah, sure, we'll fund a couple of these vaccines because we said that we weren't going to get rid of vaccines. But you know that RFK Jr. knows that mRNA vaccines don't help anything. He knows that, so do copious amounts of other people. But it has to collapse under its own weight. It has to cease to exist because of its own failure. And the fastest way to do that, of course, is to just not participate. And I think that that's happening and continuing to happen. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for listening. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.